right, here we go, people. Today in the shop, Suzuki King Quad. A little bit of a classic. Fresh drop off, so nothing to it but to do it. Let's dig in. All right, fellas and fellettes. I guess let's dig into this thing. I did notice when he dropped it off, we ain't got nothing as far as voltage goes. At least there's no lights coming on, and it doesn't crank or anything like that. So maybe it has a battery, maybe it doesn't. Guess it doesn't smells kind of rank. It's too dark.
Ooh, it's dark inside.
Yeah, we're bone dry. A little bit of debris in the tank, but really pretty clean. So that might actually be a blessing in disguise. We don't have a bunch of old dirty fuel and gumminess to clean out of the tank, but the better question is where'd the fuel go?
Where did it go?
Maybe he drained it, maybe it leaked out. It does look like the carburetor is hooked up and everything, so who knows, maybe it's leaked out of the carb, something like that. So pop this off. We do have a battery. That's good. It is hooked up. So we'll here in a second, we'll get some tools out. Test the voltage on that. Verify we do have just a dead battery. Make sure it's not blown main fuse, something of that sorts. But we'll, if nothing else, we'll put a jump pack on it just to see if it's gonna come to life. There's a fuse panel right here, so we might have to check that. We'll get the meter out and verify. Airbox, check for mice. 'Tis the season around here. Filter doesn't look too bad. It does show signs of oil being in the airbox, kind of spraying in there like he was stating. So we'll have to check that out, but no major debris. Does look like we have completage. Looks like we got a aftermarket or new starter of some sort on here, so it could be good. Carburetor is all hooked up in here. Tell you what though, what I am seeing though is an aftermarket carb.
Oh dear God, no!
Looks like a repop. Guys, we always want to try to stick with an OEM carburetor. Not to necessarily replace it because they're very expensive, $200 to $500. And these, obviously everybody wants to get these because, they're 30, 40, 50 bucks. Throw it on there and, but I tell you, 8 times out of 10, they don't work. They're not right. That's not the right jetting. Could run your machine too lean, actually even damage your motor. We always want to keep the OEM stuff. It's rebuildable. It's a known platform. Your Makunis, your Kians, stuff like that. There's always going to be rebuild kits available. Jetting is kind of the jetting for what it is. All the jets will fit. Kian jets will fit in, Kians, Makunis will fit in Makunis, and, all throughout that range, what you're playing with. With these carburetors, even though they might bolt on the same, the internals are different, orifices are different sizes. They're just not the same. So that's kind of a bummer. But we'll still check it out and see what happens. So we do have a pull rope. It does pull. It's not locked up. It definitely feels like it's got some compression. So that's a great sign. So new spark plug.
Stay on track. Focus.
Anyway, yeah, so let's get some tools out and check this battery. Maybe get a booster box ready. See if we can crank this thing over, and at least since it's freed up, maybe we can spritz some stuff in it and see if this thing barks to life. Got us a set of cables here in case we need them. I'm assuming the battery is just junk and dead, but we'll put the fluke on her. See what's going on here. We've got 1.3 volts. Not going to be enough. So that's definitely why we don't have probably any lights. So let's put these cables. I got to Battery sitting back here. You know, batteries ain't getting cheaper. That's for sure.
We don't have any corporate sponsors.
But you gotta have them. All right, let's put these two on here. And let's just, I guess, see if we got any lights. You got a neutral light. That's great. We're not locked up, so it doesn't really feel too bad. Let's try to hit a... Yeah, okay. It's definitely gonna crank. And almost sound like it wanted to bark off there. Let's get a can of brake cleaner / starter fluid, and see if this thing gonna give us a bark off. It definitely just fired right up. Motor doesn't sound too bad. Let's see if we can get to run a little bit longer on some fluid here. Maybe. Yeah, it's I know there ain't no, yeah, okay. About to say, I know there ain't no fuel in there. Wasn't nothing in that tank. Okay, that's a great sign. Motor does not sound bad at all. I don't see any smoke coming out of the exhaust. So seems like we could just be dealing with a fuel delivery issue. Tell you what I am seeing though is, oh wow, immediately.
Uh-oh.
Let me get you in here and look at this. We've got oil coming right back out of that crankcase vent. It goes back to the airbox. So that is definitely not what we want to see, especially only running that long. It makes me really wonder. He said it was doing that and kind of filling it up. Makes me wonder if it's just way over full for it to come out that quick. Let's get a dipstick here. Let's try to pop this off and see if we're maybe a little bit over full or something. Usually if that crankcase vent starts blowing oil from, blow by around the piston rings or stuff, when it's getting lower end compression, which it shouldn't have, it'll kind of just, steam or spit out of that tube after it gains a lot of pressure. But that was a really immediate feedback to the airbox to try to recirculate it. And that is not what we want. Oh, wow. Oh, let me get a cap back on this. Oh, Lord. Yeah. I would definitely say that's a problem. And it smells bad. I got the cap back on it. Let me grab this camera and get you guys in here to check this out. So, just busting this loose and check out what we got. Immediately when I open this up, look at that. Oh my God.
Ooh, we got a gusher. Oh.
That is full. Oh, sorry about that. In a panic here, I dropped my phone trying to get this cap back on because, as you can see, yeah, that is just pouring out of there as soon as we took off the cap. So that would definitely be why he's getting oil in the airbox. Let's get a pig mat here and get this soaking up. A mess. Cat litter's cheaper, but I'm out. So we'll have to go the expensive route and use the pig mats. But yeah, that is, oh my goodness. And it smells of raw fuel. So we can kind of make a speculation already of couple things. One, checking this out. Like we were saying before, this tank, bone dry.
Bottom was black hole.
Crankcase, full of oil. So that's usually coming. Yeah, see, it's bone dry in there.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally?
So one of two things happening with this. Carburetor leaking, not going out of the overflow of the bottom of the carburetor hose and draining out. Or this model, yep, has a vacuum operated petcock.
Big cock, small cock.
So what we got here is this petcock has an on position, but it really doesn't release fuel unless it receives a pulse signal via vacuum from the intake right here on the back of the petcock. These diaphragms can crack, break, rip, wear out, dry rot, you name it. And then what would happen is, instead of it flowing fuel not only to the carburetor, while it's pulsing that line, it will suck air directly into the intake, which would just really flood over the motor. Or if that's not even running, it would obviously flood itself out. But just from sitting here, if that was seeping by, it'd seep through and run right into the intake, filling up the cylinder head, running down, filling up the crankcase, which looks like what we have. Which would I say 99% sure be the culprit of why our airbox is full of oil. So I think we're ready to make a parts list for this thing and kind of see what we can get going. Obviously, it's proved to us that it is going to run. It did bark off without me even spraying anything at it. So motor sounds decent. It's at least worth the cost of admission to drain the oil, evacuate all that gas in there. We'll let it sit for a little bit, kind of let it evaporate and air out as much as we can. Obviously, the fuel's not as good for the bearings and seals and everything in the motor as we would want, but we'll change the fuel filter. We'll change the oil filter, dump that oil / gas, fill it up with new oil, maybe even once or twice, just to kind of clean itself out. See what's going on with that carburetor. Go ahead and take it off there. Obviously, I don't even want to try to run it. See if that petcock's going to hold fuel or not.
All right, there it is. Cock.
If not, maybe get a new one or something and go from there. All right, we're back. Got a couple parts in for the King Quad. Just to kind of get us going. Air filter, which I'm sure we're going to need. That other one's coated in oil. Did end up locating a petcock rebuild kit. Funny enough, doing a bunch of research for this thing, petcock no longer available, even through Suzuki. Carburetor no longer available, even through Suzuki. Replacements far and few between. I did find one. I say one option for a replacement on, like Derek says, that Jungle website for an aftermarket replacement. Looks the part. We'll see if it performs the part. Who knows? We'll have to play with it because we don't have an OEM one, and the guy doesn't either. And from talking to him, he's just wanting to take a cheaper route with this. The thing was stolen before. He's just trying to get it going for the kids and whatnot to use around the place. So we did get a battery as well. Going AGM oil filter. So we'll dig into this thing, get this thing undressed a little bit, get that tank off there, make sure it's clean, get that carb off there, go through it, go ahead and drain and evacuate this oil, let it sit. For flavor, we like to run AMSOIL, Bel-Ray, stuff like that. But I think this guy is going to get some good old O'Reilly 4-cycle stuff, just at least for the first run, to get some of this fuel out of that crankcase and at least give it a good wash. So I still got plenty in there. So, yeah, we'll run this through there. It's not bad oil. It works, guys. But, you know, high performance stuff, higher revving stuff. This thing ain't going to see a bunch of RPM.
You sure about that?
We're not putting this in, you know, no 450R sport quads or dirt bikes and stuff like that. This thing really doesn't even have wet clutch, so it does still have the wet clutch protection, but this is running CVT, so it won't really matter. These kind of these motors are like kind of the old tried and trues. They'll kind of run on anything, but obviously we're putting new oil in it, so that's better than what it's got. So let's get her started. All right. Let's get this thing blown apart here. Yeah, I know. If I put it up here, it's too loud. If I put it under here, my beard hides it, which is great, but then it sounds muffled. So we're going to rock with this furry tit. So got a plethora of tools out here. Think I'm going to have everything we need to bust this thing apart. Going to get this carb off, get the tank off, get them up here on the bench. Go ahead and try to rebuild that petcock, see what's going on with the carburetor. I went ahead and drained the oil. That way we can let everything evaporate. I still got the plugs out of it, the oil fill out of it, because as you remember, it was full of gas. So that's just evaporating out. Still got the oil filter off of it as well. So we can take everything else off and we'll get going from there. So to start, let's get this tank off here. I guess, well, before we work on anything, we can just we can get this battery off here as well. A couple tins. Get it off there because this thing is toast. And we'll just try to remember. Looks like they got a winch or something hooked up on here. Just have a winch. It does. So yeah, don't know if that works or not. I never even tested that out, but. All right, y'all. I just had to address the literal elephant in the room. Although I am a large man, I am 6 foot, 295 pounds. I don't look this big in person. I've got my camera set on 0.5 for this shot, and it makes me look like an absolute sow. Although I am fat, I'm not this big backed.
He's huge.
It does. So yeah, don't know if that works or not. I never even tested that out, but we'll get this off and out of here. And remember that which ones went where, because they are both the same. Actually, let me get a zip tie just so I can put on the positives. And that way we won't remember what goes where. Obviously, we can just look and see what runs to the starter solenoid and stuff, but this way we're sure that remember that. Can you remember that in the comments? Hot pink goes to positive. All right, good deal. This air filter off here. We got a new one over there on the bench. This one is saturated in oil. Even though an oily air filter is actually a good thing, we do pre-lube oil filters, so it does trap a lot of the dust. But this one obviously is a lot worse saturated than what we need. Plus, we will have to clean this air box out. Gas cap's off. Looks like I'm gonna get this shroud off here. Allen. So, hopefully, once we get everything stripped off here, looks like we got some vent lines for the carburetors. Let's get those cleaned off. Don't know what that tube goes to. Should probably go to the carburetor. Probably for the diaphragm on the top, but it wasn't connected. We'll just cut that. We're going to need to put a new one on it anyway. Yeah, this ethanol, this gas, just that pre-bend on that. It's just hard as a rock. So we'll get a new one going on that. Petcock is free. Get these tins off here and see if this tank comes off. Should. Hopefully, these utility quads are loaded up with plastic. Sometimes undressing these things just to be able to get what you need to work on is half the battle. If this tank looks like it should just come right out the back, Some models, though, we're having to remove racks and everything else, but doesn't look like we'll have to do that on this one. This should just lift up and out of here, maybe. Make sure we're not attached to anything else. Oh, yeah, we do have that vent line, which is what I believe was filling up the crankcase as well. All right, vent line is off there. Should be able to lift up, yeah. And luckily, if you remember, the tank is empty and light as a feather. Yeah, nothing. So, yeah, let's get this on the bench. Use our work on over here. We'll go ahead and get that rebuilt. Let you guys see that. Get this intake band clamp off. Get this carburetor slid out of this intake boot. All right, that looks like it's going to come off here pretty good. Get this intake boot off. Maybe, looks like I might be able to take this thing right up out of the top. A little persuasion here. Or not. Come on.
Today, Junior.
All right, looky there. So we're up and out. Let's get this choke off here. Excuse my cough. Don't smoke, kids. Really bad habit.
This son of a bitch is huge.
Plus the fatness don't help. All right, choke cable off. Ooh. Yeah, that's puking yellow fuel. Definitely old stuff in there. So, really don't think we'll have to get too much farther deep into this thing. Once, hopefully, get this carb off, like I said, put the new one on, rebuild that petcock. Got those fluids being changed. And might not be too hateful getting this thing back up and going for these people. So there's that vacuum pulse line as we're talking about. So this is what goes around the back of the carburetor or the back of the petcock, and it sucks a vacuum signal right through a porthole in there. And if that was for sure going through the petcock, that fuel is just going to drain through here, roll down in here, straight to the intake, then straight down through the top of the engine and filling up the crankcase, which is what I believe happened. So especially since this line itself is rock solid, which also could just be cheap line. But all right, we'll get this over here out of the way. I don't think we really need to take anything else off. Got the battery off, air filter off. We need to get a rag in here and clean up this gross fuel. Everything else must be in order. We always want to check this intake boot. Sometimes, especially these old machines getting older, they'll dry rot and crack. If they're not pliable, if you can't move them around and then make sure that there's no cracks in them, if you can't move them around, that means they're usually too dry. That can also cause intake leak for your air and definitely won't make it run right. There's a piece of everything. All right, we got access to the everything we need. So, all right, let's get got everything over on the bench here. Let's go through this petcock, see what we can find. Let's go ahead and bust this thing apart and see what we can see. So actually, that's it's actually stamped McCooney around that petcock too. Yikes. Save these. Oh yeah, look at that. All that rusty stuff in there. Oh yeah, for sure. We're definitely going to have to clean that out, even though the tank's completely empty. Let's see if I can get you in here and check this out or not. If you can see, yeah, look at all that gunk inside of there. Not good. So, all right, either way, we're going to get this petcock rebuilt. And this is what I was talking about before. So right here we have the fuel shutoff knob, what directs your flow. And if you notice, it doesn't actually ever have an off position. We got reserve, PRI, which stands for prime, and then on. So prime is going to give us just a gravity-fed flow through here, straight out to the carburetor here. On and reserve, on is going to be your top section, which is going to run your fuel tank level down to here. And then it's not going to overflow into this tube, let it run out anymore. Then if you switch it to reserve, it leaves you this much fuel from here to the bottom as a reserve of the portion tank to get somewhere you're going in case you forgot to put fuel in it, something like that. So, but this does not let fuel flow through in the reserve or the on positions unless this hose here senses a vacuum signal to pull a diaphragm in there and release a plunger that goes through here to let gas flow through. So cool design. I don't know what was ever really wrong with, gravity fed stuff, but it does help for rollovers and things like that. So nothing to it but to do it. Let's dig in here and see what we got. Go ahead and try to bust these screws loose. And before we take it apart, just to make sure we don't have any debris in here, we'll spray this thing down on the outside. Take a light brush, just clean off any debris that is sitting around the mating surfaces and stuff. Even though we're going to clean this out, spray it out. Maybe even put it in the ultrasonic, give it a bath. Looks to be pretty clean. I don't think we'll need to sonic it by any means, but cleanliness is key. So let's go ahead and busted this apart. Busted them loose already. Let's get these screws out of here. Get a little tray going. And we can see what's going on. We might even be able to see a split in this diaphragm. I'm not sure. But we'll check it out. Either way, this has got to be where that fuel's coming from. Because if it was coming from the carburetor, 9 chances out of 10, it would go through the overflow and pour out the bowl overflow. It really wouldn't leak back through the intake. A little knock, maybe. All right, there we go. So this is what we're looking at. So this is the vacuum signal that it would receive from here, and this rubber diaphragm would pull that in. You see me moving that. So we got an O-ring here that seals that plunger from going that way. So if you kind of picture the vacuum pulling this in, would pull this plunger back, just like you see me pushing with my hand, and it would let fuel come through that hole where you can see daylight. So if this diaphragm was leaking, which it does look split. Yeah. Let me get maybe a pick and a blade here so we can peel this off here, and I can show you. Try to take it off as clean as we can without ripping it myself. There we go. All right, and see that spring that's behind it is what gives us the pumping effect or tension when we don't have vacuum. So yeah, so this is just a diaphragm, thin rubber piece. It can dry out, wear out, like we were saying before. But right here, get you on here. Where's it at? It's right next to the perimeter. So it looks like it's fairly thin. Where's it at? Oh, no, I seen a hole in it. Hold on here. Yeah, right there. If we can get this camera to focus or not. Nope, maybe. Hey, there we go. See that little tear? That's all it takes, guys. That little bit of a tear cause that just to seep fuel right back through there. So we'll clean up this surface. That's going to be where our new seal goes on the back of our petcock for our vacuum diaphragm actuation. So get that all cleaned up. Inside this thing really doesn't look bad. All that debris, these little screens that's on here was kind of catching all that rust, so they were doing their job. So I don't see anything in there. But since we do have a rebuild kit anyway, we're going to go ahead and bust the front of this off and check. Since we have a full rebuild kit, there's no reason not to take it all the way apart. I know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And sometimes it does bite you in the ass. But to give us the best chance and reputation possible, we're just going to rebuild the whole thing. If it'll come out, there we go. Same thing here. Got an O-ring that seals around there to keep it coming off the face. The wave ring, which holds tension on it, because this is actually the face that rides against this seal on the inside. Pick that out of there. This can also be a point of leak too, if for some reason you have like a gravity-fed petcock. This mating surface here can get dry and wore out and leak. So really pretty clean inside there though, which is good news. So let's get our kit together and we'll rebuild this thing. All right, first things first, we're going to take some brake cleaner, get this tank started to clean out a little bit. Spray some stuff through it. Remember, it was just had a little bit of debris in there. And most of that rust, obviously it's a plastic tank, so it's not going to be coming from the tank, but we do have a fuel level gauge here, a little twisty turby thing on it, and that could probably rust out. So we'll clean that up real good, shake it around, let it drain as much as we can, and to get the rest of that debris out of there, a little trick that we like to do is either take a rag that's fairly clean, shove it in the hole. I know I can't get it out, but we got a tool for that. Or best is some lint-free paper towels, something like that. What that's going to do is we'll take some air, blow around in this tank, and that rag or paper towel will actually kind of scrub the inside of that tank a little bit, believe it or not, with all the air pressure that's going through it. So just take this, blow this around a bunch, and you can feel the rags moving around in there. It's also a good way if you are going to rinse out a tank to clean out anything else that's in it. I've washed them out plenty of times with water hoses, and then keep putting a bunch of paper towels in there until they come out dry. So it's a really good way to clean them out. It works pretty well. So we'll go back and clean this thing out. We got these little claw tools, lifter grabber actually. But to get that rag out, we'll just move it around, reach down in there, grab it, and pull it out. That easy. So there's one. Locate our other one. Maybe. There it is. Two. So that works well. We'll shine a light down on that later, let it evaporate out if there's anything left in there. Looks pretty dry, but we'll check that out later. All right, let's get into rebuilding this petcock here. Okay, we have everything on the bench we should need. Did go ahead and bust apart that kit. We've got every single part and piece, and it does look like it matches up. So that's great. So we will start with our base. This base gasket Even though it looks good, we got a new one, we're going to change it. Scrape out any debris in that groove. There's a tiny bit. This thing is bare now. We will go ahead and blow through every orifice. Just to make sure we are clean. And put this thing back together. So yeah, we're looking pretty good. Blow this off. Same thing in reverse is all we got to do. Start with our gasket we just took off. It's going to be our base. There's little indents on these that will hold them in for you if you kind of press them down in there. So that's good. Here is our selector. Pull this O-ring off here too. Looks like here is the replacement. Now, for anything that's going to rub metal on metal, and these O-rings are dry, we're going to take just a tad bit of grease, something that's fuel soluble. We don't want to use no really penetrant sprays on them or anything, because that can actually make your gaskets swell, and you'll have a bitch of a time putting them back in. I'm talking a tiny bit of grease. I mean, I just got a little nub on the finger there. Just enough to give it a little bit of lubrication. Helps it slide on. Helps it do what we need to do when it's all going back together. So that is beautiful. We need the diverter gasket. It's just a 4-hole job. Lube it up so it can slide easy on the face of this one. So that just locates here with these holes. There we go. Just locates itself, essentially. All right, now we're ready to pop this piece back in there. Now, what you do want to keep in mind is location of the knob. This has one flat spot on it, and it would need to point in the direction of whatever notates on your clip. Remember where we said reserve prime on? So that was down. And that's just where it needs to go. So make sure we put it in the same way. Make sure we don't rip that O-ring, twist it, kind of get it going in there. That's beautiful. There's our diverter spring. It's just a wavy washer with, it's not totally flat. So that when you squeeze it together, it puts just a little bit of tension on there, keeps that sealing surface flat inside this petcock. So we'll get that back in there where it should be and put back on this face. And then our selector for the diverter is essentially rebuilt on the front. Then all I got to do is work on that that rear diaphragm that was actually the problem area itself. So get this screwed on here and sealed up. That way, when we're working on the other side, we don't have anything that enters. One other trick. Man, you know, there's nothing like stripping out these tiny Phillips or carburetor bowl gasket, or carburetor bowl screws and stuff like that. Really invest in a set of JIS screwdrivers. They look like Phillips. They are, in fact, not a Phillips. It is called a JIS, stands for Japanese Industrial Standard. They fit these screws like no other. You can't strip them out as easy. They come in multiple sizes. You know, we got big, little, medium, small. Really, like this would be what everybody would use like a PH Phillips 3 on. This would be like a PH2, and this would be like a PH1. But actually, they're totally different. It's a JIS 1, 2, and 3. Look them up. Invest in them if you're going to work on this stuff. It just makes life a whole lot easier. You really don't have to strip out screws and everything like that. Let's go ahead and rotate this to make sure It rotates smoothly. Okay. We're golden. We are golden. So that feels nice. Not too tight, not too loose. Feels like it's going to be great. So this surface in here, we are all cleaned up. This surface, we did go ahead and clean as well. Now what we are going to do also is make sure our pulse line is clear, which I never really blew through. So we'll shoot it with a little bit of stuff. And if you can, guys can, you probably can't see it. Let me see if I can get you. It's a tiny, see it barely shooting through. It's a tiny little stream that comes through there. Really small hole. It's not the center one, it's the one on top of that. Really small. So we do want to make sure that's clear. And it works like a one-way valve. So air will let it go this way, but it really won't let much come back the other way. Okie dokie. Here is our new diaphragm. What we are going to check is check it against the other one. That it is the same and has the same throw. It looks like it does. So we'll need the O-ring for the front of that, which pushes in there kind of like almost like a big fat needle and seat. And we'll go ahead and lube this up as well. Not that much, a little bit. Right on there. And we don't want to get a bunch of extra grease on this because the one side of this is air. And we want it to stay clean, because if we get a bunch of dirt in there from the air and it has grease in there, it's going to collect and make things sticky. So we're going to wipe off any extra excess that we have. Just enough to get it on there, not let it rip, and so on and so forth. So one trick we can do is push this in here, make sure that it does line up, and make sure when we push on it, we cannot blow air through this side while we're holding this. If it does leak, then something's wrong. Either this surface is not sealing, or that seat that this O-ring presses on is dirty, scored, or otherwise. So as you see, we're blowing through it. Turn this to the other position. Halfway between. Okay, yep. Looks like we're good. So that's great. All right, let me get a little bit of silicone spray and we'll put that on there. All right, we got a little bit of silicone spray here. This actually goes on a little bit wet, but when it dries really quick. You don't need a bunch. It dries really quick, but it leaves back behind a film of really thin silicone. Makes it kind of slick, but it won't be like grease that stays wet and attracts dust. So give us a second to dry out. Get our diaphragm back in there. Now, if you don't forget, we have a spring that goes on the back side of this that keeps pressure push against it so that it seals when we need it to and goes on when we don't. So this kit did come with a new spring. After squeezing it, I do trust this kit was a Moose. So most of your Moose, all balls, things of that nature are decent kits. This spring, although it looks the same diameter, it is the same stagnant length, but upon feeling it, this is the OEM one, and this is the new one. When you squeeze them, this is definitely, the new one's definitely a lighter spring. It would probably work fine, but from my experience, a little bit stronger spring behind that. The vacuum pulse is always strong enough to open up that petcock. And what we don't want is a weak spring pushing on that seal when we don't have a vacuum to seal that petcock off. So we're going to keep that spring, put it in the box of springs to keep in-house. And we're going to reuse this OEM one because it does feel a little stronger to me. So diaphragm's lined up. Diaphragm spring is on there. Now let's not forget the orientation of our pulse line, which was the same way as the petcock. So line that on there, push her down. You can see through all the holes. So put the screws back in there. And that's really all it was to rebuild that. I've seen them a lot worse on the inside, you know, to where you got a bunch of corrosion and stuff like that. That was not the case on this one. So we got pretty lucky. Sometimes even sonicking them, an ultrasonic bath will not even take off all the corrosion and stuff. And then even if it does, we end up with pitting. If we had a bunch of pitting in here and we was trying to put in, you know, this style gasket that was on there, even those new seals, if it's not a smooth, clean surface, it could be a clean, not smooth surface and make it leak. So we'll tighten this up, go crossways, just like you would anything else. Don't need to kill it with torque here. It's just a little piece of aluminum. This is the carburetor we took off. Like we said about 10 times. Obviously a repop. Diaphragm seems good. Yeah. So let's check our new one here and see side by side. That's a vent line. That will go in place of that pink one that we was talking about before on the other side. And overflow line, cap, yeah, whatnot. Oh, look here. It looks like in this one, they did send the throttle cable retainer, which goes on there. But they also sent a couple different, looks like main jets. So if it was running on this other one before, just for research purposes, let's pull this off here and see what kind of main was in there. We will bust open this bag and see if we can read what is on the jets that came with it. Keep in mind, we'll have to get our jet gauging tool out to see if, you know, a 140 main jet gauging tool actually matches what it says this is. So my guess is no. So what we got is, looks like a 120 and a 125. So who knows what's inside that carburetor. And looks like in the other one, yeah, we're marked 125 as well. Oh, you ain't even gonna try. You can't see it. Too small. But so 125, maybe that's enough. Maybe it ain't. Who knows? At least we know what was in this one, and we can go from there. Besides that, it looks pretty similar. Not exactly the same one that was on there. There's our pulse line hookup, our fuel inlet hookup. Let's blow on it to see if it's stuck or not stuck. We'll flip it over, see if it stops at least our wind going through, upside down, not going through. So that's a good sign. Doesn't always mean it's going to seal because the float level could be off. So we'll recap that for now. Diaphragm feels good. It's returning back slowly like it should. Throttle cable hookup. Yeah, also looks the same. So let's set this one off the side so we don't get any parts confused. Let's go ahead and bust the bowl off this one just to see what kind of jet this one came with. And, you know, I've even seen weirder stuff before where they might even send jets in a bag and not even one in the carburetor. And somebody that might not check will put it on their bike and be like, hey, didn't run at all. Yeah, because it didn't have a main jet in it or running too rich. Or you just never know what you're getting with these aftermarket ones. I've seen a lot of weird stuff. We'll also check the air-fuel mixture screw for a baseline setting. I can look that up. And I'll also, while I'm looking that up, I'll look up the stock jet sizes that it should take if it was the Mikuni carburetor that was supposed to have on it. Be careful of our gasket here. Good. All right. So this one, it's a 122. So actually that's right in the middle of the 120 and the 125 we got. What do we do? Most generally, These things are a little bit under enriched from the factory. So just so we don't have to take it apart later. And when we're talking not a full 10 or 5 up in jet sizing on these, it's really not that much different. So we'll go ahead and just change this 122 out for the larger 125. Not because that's what that other one had in it, just because it's easier to lean this thing down than it is to richen it up with the fuel enrichment screws. So by looking through the orifices, yeah, I mean, it's so little of a difference, you can't even really tell anyway. But just out of curiosity, just so we know if these are even actual gauged correct jets, let's run a gauging tool through it. That'd be interesting just to see. I think they're in here. Some booklet. Nope, those are all wrong tools for what I need. There's the box. Yeah, all right, there's all our jetting sizes. So we need 120. Let's just start with the 120. That's a nice, easy, fair number. So, all right, 120. Yep, that's a 120. Yeah, and it will not pass through. So there's a telltale for you. Let's try. What was this one? The 122? Yeah, because we put in the 125. 122 won't go through either. See if it'll fit through this other 125 on this one. Nope. So let's see what actual size it is. It's a 115 here. Let's run that through the 120. All right. So a 115 goes through. Try 117 here. Yep. So 117 is about where it's at. Just a little bit of a drag. So we're actually 117 is gauging on a 120 on this, and so this should be maybe a 120. But remember, the 120 didn't go through this either. So see how it's just off, even though they're marked only a couple steps off from each other. They weren't a couple steps off. So let's see how many points this one is off. So 122. So we was a 17. Let's try a different ring here. There we go. Half steps. Bear with me. But it just proves the point to where, it's not apples to apples. Yeah, so this 122, probably this one then. 122 is gauging as a 119. So there you go. Our 120 gauges as 17. Our 122 gauges as a 19. That's only 1 point off from each other, but they're 2 points off from things. So that's what we was talking about. If we used to buy Mikuni jets, a 120 is going to be a 120. A 125, going to be a 125. So we'll just remember that this 125 gauge is about a 120, and we'll see how it runs. We might have to get even a jet drill and drill this 125 out to get it to gauge right. Just goes to show you, it's a lot more work. You might be paying me a lot more extra to actually gauge and drill out junk jets to make them try to perform as OEM or equivalent when you get this stuff. So, all right, so we got that 125 in there. Good move on us. So let's put this back on. Now, what we're going to do when we put these float bowl screws in here, I don't know if you all are religious, but we're going to say a little prayer.
Dear Lord, baby Jesus.
Dear Lord, please let this cheap carburetor work on this machine so I can return it to the customer in good running order. I don't want this little carburetor to be the downfall of my success. Even though I could spend a lot of time on it and make it run semi-decent, it usually costs me more in labor than it's worth, and I give away my time and energy for free. So
We ask these blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Jesus' name, amen.
all right, that should take care of us. Glory be to God. Always want to check too our overflow drain. I've seen them come in the box, not tight. That one's tight. So in the box we also got a fancy new drain hose that is completely kinked in half. So yeah. So let's take our flush cuts, get the thing off there, cut that kink right out of it. So if it does flow over, it'll actually go out the overflow. So that looks better, doesn't it? On these overflows, we'd always also like to cut them on an angle. That way mud, if it was to get, it's harder to plug that pipe that's cut on an angle than it is to plug something that's flush. So we'll put this overflow hose on here. Put our clamp on there that seems too loose, but that's just fine. Run our idle up a little bit, looking through there just so we see a little bit of daylight. I think we're good. Our diaphragm felt good. We're just going to check our caps. Easier to do out here while it's on the bench. And then there, our vent tube, that'll hook up to the large vent tube here. This choke, that's the next thing we want to check. If it was an OEM carburetor, the choke would probably work. But since this choke plunger that's inside of here, spring plunger. There's a spring. There's our plunger. Might not be the same as the other one. Obviously, this one came with this one, so this is the one we're going to put on. A lot of people make that mistake by using different throttle slides and caps, like, oh, it was the same. Well, if it was OEM, yes. Most times when people mess with them, no. So at least use what came with it. Give us the best chance for success. We'll leave the vent cap on there and the fuel cap on there. All right, I think we're ready to get this thing installed on the bike. All right, we're rocking and rolling on this thing. Got the new air filter in, got it pre-oiled up, new carbs in, everything hooked up. I do have the new vent line just sitting on here, extra long because I don't know how long it needs to be. Same with the fuel line, got a new piece on there. We'll cut it once we set this tank on here and see exactly how long it needs to be. Petcock is remounted, tank verified is clean, and I think we're ready to go. So we're going to put the drain plug back in this thing, fill her up with some oil, put this tank back on here, and battery. Hopefully that's all we need. All right, let's see if we can get this tank slapped up in here. Should be relatively easy.
He doesn't realize.
I'll put it in the right way.
What an idiot.
All right, there we go. That's a lot better. Some bolts here for it. So yeah, coming up here, the endings of this project, we hope. Shouldn't be really anything else much to do. Hopefully runs good, make a few more carb adjustments potentially. Hopefully that's it. So let's get this vacuum line cut off and stuck on here. It looks like it should be plenty. All right, snip, snip. And our fuel line as well. It's a nicer day out here today. We got kind of an abnormal late winter. It's almost 60 degrees here today. So we got the We got the doors open on the shop. Let the fresh air in.
Nobody asked.
Can't beat that. All right. Let's reposition here. Get some oil in this thing. All right. We're calling for, around the crankcase says 2,900 milliliters of oil. 946 milliliters to a quart. Just a shade over, or just right about 3 quarts. So, and I believe it'll take it all too. We did put that new oil filter on there, so that'll take up some. We'll probably end up running this thing, letting it get warm up to temperature, evaporate anything it might have left in the crankcase, and dump this stuff and put in some other, just to be sure that we can get as much of that gas and stuff out of there as possible. And hopefully the gas being in there didn't make us spring any leaks. So there's 2 quarts, and here goes the third. So after we dump this in here, we will, guess really the only thing we got left, we got all lines hooked up. Got to put on this petcock knob. We'll throw that on. All we got left to do is put the battery in this thing, dump some gas in it, see what happens. So there's our 3 quarts. While we're here, here's our knob. If you remember when we was talking about that petcock, it has a flat spot on it. Now the same thing on this. This is going to be just keyed a certain way that has a flat spot that'll only fit on really one way. So flat spots up right now, flat spots up here, and it should hold us on right there. We are located in the prime position, so that's going to flow fuel directly to it. And basically what that does, that prime is going to prime the carburetor, let it start, and then we'll start getting a vacuum pulse, this petcock. So let's go ahead and just put it in the on position for now. That way we can make sure that we don't have any leaks here, and it's not going to let anything go through to the carburetor real quick. So get this dipstick on here. Okay, well, got the battery all hooked up. Didn't think you guys wanted to see that. So got some fuel. Let's dump some fuel in this thing and see what we got going. We'll let this fill up a second. If it does start and seems to run pretty decent, all we're going to do is check the idle, make sure it's going to idle, see how it sits there and runs, check for any oil leaks, check for any gas leaks is the biggest thing. And then if it continues to run, we'll let her run and warm up. Okay, it's probably about 2 gallons or so in there. Should be enough to get us to our on position. We shouldn't have to run it on reserve on that. So let's go ahead and turn this carburetor to prime. That's just going to let fuel flow through like we was talking about. While it's doing this, we're going to check for leaks coming out of the petcock, which I don't see any right now. And then we're also going to check for leaks coming out of the overflow. I got that hose draped right here for now so we can see it right in our face before we tuck it up underneath of the swing arm. So if I see a leak, I want to try to address it right away. All right, let's see if we can turn a key and fire this thing up. We've got no leaks. Still got it on prime. We should be able to take that off now. Leave it in the on's in the bottom. See if that vacuum is going to continue to feed our carburetor. And yeah, let's try it without choke. Wow, that fired right up. Idle doesn't sound too bad. It's a little high. Let's take that idle down a little bit. Sounds good. I don't see any smoke coming out of the exhaust, which is great. Sounds a little bit better for idle. Will it rev? Definitely tell it ain't been ran in a while. Seems to take gas fine. Does seem a little bit sooty. So yeah, I'd count that as a win. Let's see if we can get a restart here, and if it's just as easy. Wow, that's great. Choke's idling up like it should. Idles down like it should. So that's great. All right, cool. I guess let's go ahead and put the airbox lid back on that. That'll help it perform a little bit better. Before I put this airbox lid back on, just wanted to get you guys in here to show you that, yeah, there was no more oil in the airbox. That was our biggest concern before, where it was coming back around through this crankcase vent that leads back to the intake. So let's get this finally dressed back completely up and take this hog for a rip. I think it's going to run well for us. All right, got it all put back together. Seems to be running great. I'm going to let it sit here and idle. I have went ahead, let it warm all the way up, go ahead and evacuated all the fluids, refilled it back up with new oil. Didn't really seem much like it was gassy or anything from it before, but yeah, let's run this up down the driveway and take a rip. Here we go. Seems to shift nice. Takes gas pretty good. Yeah, it seems to act just like normal. So I'd say we're about done with this one. Pull it in the garage here, check for any more leaks as we just ran it. We'll run it around some more and then do a closeout on this thing. All right, I guess that pretty much does it for our King Quad project and our first video. Let me know what you guys think. You know, was the video too long? Too short? I need some feedback. I try to make this in kind of an intermediate meeting ground where maybe people that know a little bit about stuff can get some more technical tips, but somebody that really doesn't know maybe much can get some insight, or maybe learn a thing or two. So either way, we're going to be happy to get this back to the customer. Couldn't ask for it to run better. Results came out great. We got new drop off today. ATC 70 Honda Classic. We'll be putting a top end on that one for the next video. Should be shorter video. So yeah. So like I said again, let me know what you guys think. We're gonna get this thing out of there, the next one in here, and go from there. So once again, this is Elk Creek Power Sports. Glad y'all could stop by. See you on the next one.